this world today, there are many ways to fall from grace and to go astray. We should realize that in our lives we can make a change for a brighter day.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillahi. All praise and thanks are due to Almighty Allah, and blessings and peace be upon His messenger, the last messenger for humanity, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Dear viewers everywhere, I greet you with the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Again, we are talking about different episodes, another episode about the same theme, which is the two options. Today, we are going to talk about a child, a female girl who is very young, who is subject to this situation, and she had a test. She confronted a test. As you know, that this series is about a group of tests that usually all human beings confront in their life. And when they have a test, they have multiple choices. They have many options, and these options for Muslims, they appear as if they are only two options. Option number one, which usually is the obedience, and the essence of it is the obedience of Almighty Allah, obeying a decree from Almighty Allah and from His messenger, peace be upon him. The second choice, the second option, is option number two, where it represents disobedience. And as I explained before, usually it may have some categories in it. It can be option 2A, to B, to C, and so on and so forth. So it's not necessarily that it takes only one form. It takes different forms. But we Muslims, we classify them into two categories. One is the obedience of Almighty Allah, and I refer to it as option number one. The other one, or all the other options fall under option number two, which represent a type of disobedience to Almighty Allah. Today I'm talking about the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the second caliph. And there is a famous story at that time that one quality of Umar ibn Khattab, and I wish that all the leaders and presidents and kings and princes who live nowadays, they would learn the lesson. And the most important thing, they applied because they know the lesson. Umar ibn Khattab used to inspect his society, to go from time to time, at night, during day, to see what's going on by himself, not asking even his soldiers or his assistants to do this. He has to see things by himself, usually because it has been proved that the assistants and the soldiers and the other ones may not say the story exactly as it is, and it may be colored by their own personal viewpoints. So he wanted to see by himself what's happening to his people and his followers. And one time he was passing, walking in one of the streets and lanes, and he heard from a conversation coming out from a house where a mother was asking her daughter to mix the milk with water, so that, of course, the amount of milk would increase and they would sell more. And the child was facing this situation, either to obey her mother, which is considered option number two, because her mother in this situation asked her to cheat, because this is a clear type of cheating, or to be as a Muslim and follow the command of the Prophet ﷺ and obeying the decree from Almighty Allah and from the Prophet ﷺ, which refers to option number one, which, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ghasha falaysa minna." Whoever cheats is not from us. And there are many verses in the Quran that are against cheating and betraying and all these types of cheating that's happening among people. So this young girl was confronting these two options. She didn't say, as many people nowadays say, that I'm going to follow the command of my mother. No, because we know as Muslims that we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than anyone else, more than our parents, more than our spouses, more than our children, because the obedience that we have to obey is given to Almighty Allah, is not given to human beings. Even if they are close enough to us, even if they are good to us, but once they make a mistake that conflicts with the essence of Islam, definitely we have to disagree with them, because their obedience will lead us to go from option number 1 to move gradually to option number 2, which is a representation of disobedience of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim doesn't usually fall into that. A Muslim would say that as long as this command contradicts with the command from Almighty Allah or a command from His Messenger, the only choice that I have would all the time be option number 1. Here, there is a golden rule in Islam. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience for any creature, for any human being, for any father, for any husband, for any spouse, for any child, for any friend, for any president, for any king, for anyone in the world, if this contradicts or this obedience make us do some sort of actions that disobey Almighty Allah. As long as this command, if I follow a command from any human being that goes well with the obedience of Allah, I will do that. And the essence of it, really, I'm not obeying this person in particular or per se, rather I am obeying Almighty Allah as long as the command matches the Quran and the Sunnah. So the young child was confronting this situation, and her mother justifies. The daughter told her mother that this is a kind of cheating, and her mother said that Umar ibn al-Khattab, the president or the ruler or the king of the country, is not watching us. So we can do this. And again, here is a very important thing. A lot of people, when they say that, they forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala watches everything and His angels record everything. Her mother asked her that Umar ibn Khattab is not, told her, Umar ibn Khattab is not watching us. But the girl was smarter than her mother. And she said that if Umar ibn Khattab is not watching us, the Lord of Umar ibn Khattab is watching us. And she refers to, of course, Rabb al-Alameen, the Lord of the worlds, the Lord of Umar, the Lord of her mother, the Lord of every human being. She was referring to that. So the child was much smarter, and she was not deceived by the trick or the trap that had been made for her by her mother. It's a very important lesson, and I'm quite sure you can think of some examples that you've gone through that are similar to this. Sometimes your boss, sometimes your president, sometimes your leader, sometimes even your father or your mother would ask you to do something that's un-Islamic, that's classified un-Islamic, which definitely makes it fall into the category of option number 2. And a lot of us do not reflect upon the command. Rather, they would take the command and they apply it directly. Even among spouses, even among the parent and the children, it happens everywhere and every day. People forget. Anytime you get a command, you have to balance it by the Quran and Sunnah and see if it matches any one of these, the Quran and the Sunnah. Go ahead and do it, because by doing it, you are selecting option number 1, which represents full obedience to Allah and to His Messenger. And we Muslims, as we promised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we all the time selected option number 1 because it represents obedience. This is the lesson, and I am reminding you here that you need to filter any command that comes to you, particularly from the closer people to you. You may think that they are good. You may think that they are, yes, believers, and they are believers, but you forget that the shaitan, Satan, is whispers to them as it whispers to you. It whispers to everybody, so sometimes there is a human weakness. So regardless of the person, we don't love the people for themselves. We love the people as long as they follow the truth. This is another golden rule in Islam. Our love for people is affected by this golden rule that we follow human beings and we love them as long as they obey Almighty Allah. Once they disobey Almighty Allah, there is no obedience for them. And even our love would be temporary and would be taken from them until they go back and obey Almighty Allah. I am quite sure that we need to tell this story to our children. We need to tell it to everyone. And we need to apply this story in our life, particularly with our children, and day after day. And they should practice such a thing. Even you can test your children to see whether they obey you or you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you correct them until they know that the rule is obeying Almighty Allah before obeying any human being. Dear viewers everywhere, I hope you benefited from this, and I hope you can share it with other people. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us learn from this huge knowledge in Islam, and most importantly, to apply it in our life. Until we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Your presenter today is Mamdouh Muhammad.
In this world today, there are many ways to fall from grace and to go astray. We should realize that in our lives we can make a change.